I thought I already knew this story. Honestly, I think most of us do. Crypto got big, Wall Street laughed, and somewhere along the way, it quietly changed its mind. Simple. End of documentary. Or at least, that's exactly what I expected to find. The first document made me feel pretty confident. Jamie Dimon. Bitcoin is a fraud.
Mentioned Bitcoin. You said you didn't know what we were talking about. We pretty much always have some crypto conversation with you. I'm just curious because I don't think we've talked to you since.
I think all that's been a waste of time, and why you guys waste any breath on it is totally beyond me.
Because you just think the whole thing just is
going to zero?
Going to zero and it's fake?
Bitcoin itself is a hyped up fraud. It's a pet rock.
You're back to that?
Yeah,
really?
Of course, yeah.
Fair enough. Love him or hate him, you couldn't accuse him of being unclear. America's biggest bank wanted nothing to do with Bitcoin. Case closed. I actually remember smiling. Well, this is going to be easier than I thought. Then I opened another document. Not from a crypto company, not from Reddit, not from some anonymous guy on X with laser eyes in his profile picture. From JPMorgan. The same bank had spent years building blockchain infrastructure. I stopped reading, went back, read Jamie Dimon's quote again, opened the second document, read that again. Back, forward. It felt ridiculous, like watching two witnesses describe completely different crimes. One of them had to be wrong. Or I was asking the wrong question. That was the first crack in the story. And once you notice the first crack, it's amazing how quickly the whole wall starts falling apart. So I did what every obsessive researcher eventually does. I stopped trying to prove myself right. I started trying to prove myself wrong. If JPMorgan really was contradicting itself, then surely another company would tell a completely different story. That would solve everything. So I picked the last company I expected to agree with a bank, BlackRock. Not because I wanted more evidence, because I wanted an escape. One report, one sentence, one reason to say, see, JPMorgan was just being weird. Instead, I found something much worse. Not the same words, not the same products, not even the same business, just the same direction. That was the moment I stopped investigating companies and started investigating patterns. Because one company can make a strange decision. Two completely different companies making strangely similar decisions, that's usually how bigger stories begin. So I opened another report, pressed Control F, typed one word, Bitcoin, a few results. Exactly what I expected. Then, almost out of frustration, I deleted it. Sat there for a second and typed something else, tokenization. The screen exploded. Again. Different pages, different paragraphs, different contexts. Same word. That was the moment I leaned back in my chair. Not because I'd found an answer, because I'd just lost another theory. I'd spent days following headlines about Bitcoin. Meanwhile, the people actually building the future of finance seemed to be having an entirely different conversation. And for the first time, I wondered if the biggest crypto story of the last 5 years was never really about crypto at all. I stopped searching for words. Instead, I started reading everything around them. That's when the story quietly changed. Not once in all those reports did I find someone saying Bitcoin is the future of finance. That surprised me. Actually, it confused me. Because if Wall Street was supposedly embracing crypto, why wasn't Wall Street talking about crypto? Instead, the same ideas kept showing up. Settlement, payments, reconciliation, infrastructure. I'll be honest, my first reaction was, great, I've accidentally wandered into the world's most boring documentary. But then, something strange happened. The more I read, the less boring it became. Every company described the problem differently. Different terminology, different products, different priorities. Yet somehow, they were all trying to solve the exact same thing. Less waiting, less paperwork, fewer manual checks, fewer systems arguing about who was right. That didn't sound like a revolution. It sounded like maintenance. Like engineers trying to fix plumbing that everyone else had forgotten even existed. So I did what someone should have done days earlier. I stopped reading every article about crypto, every market analysis, every opinion piece, and opened documents I'd never imagined reading: financial market infrastructure, clearing, settlement, payment systems. I wasn't excited. Honestly, I was expecting to be bored. Instead, I found the sentence that completely changed the investigation. Not because it was dramatic, because it was painfully ordinary. The reports weren't asking, how do we replace banks? They were asking, how do we stop banks from repeating the same work over and over again? I actually stopped reading, not because I'd found the answer, because I'd realized I'd been asking the wrong question since the beginning. I'd been chasing technology. They were chasing efficiency. Those are not the same thing. Think about it. If 5 people are editing the same document and everyone keeps emailing different versions back and forth, the problem isn't that nobody has a computer. The problem is that nobody is working from the same file. Suddenly, all those boring words started making sense. Reconciliation, settlement, shared records. They weren't exciting because they were new. They were exciting because they described problems that had quietly existed for decades. Then one question hit me. If every major bank already has world-class technology, why couldn't they solve this themselves? They've built trading systems that process billions of dollars, global payment networks, risk models, some of the most sophisticated software on Earth. So why did they keep arriving at blockchain? The answer was almost embarrassingly simple. The problem wasn't building a better database. Every bank already had a great database. The problem was every bank had a different one. Different records, different systems, different versions of the same transaction. And every time money moved, those systems had to agree before anything was truly finished. That's the moment blockchain finally clicked for me. Not as a replacement for banks, not as magic internet money, but as a shared record, a way for multiple institutions to stop constantly checking each other's homework. I'd spent days trying to understand blockchain, when I should have been trying to understand the problem it was solving. And once that clicked, every report I'd been reading suddenly sounded completely different. That's when the contradiction I'd started with finally disappeared. Jamie Dimon calling Bitcoin a fraud, JPMorgan investing in blockchain. For days, I'd treated those as 2 completely opposite ideas. They weren't. I'd simply forced them into the same conversation. One was talking about an asset, the other was talking about infrastructure. Those are 2 very different debates. Once I separated them, everything else fell into place. BlackRock wasn't trying to become a crypto company. Visa wasn't trying to replace dollars with Bitcoin. JPMorgan wasn't secretly abandoning traditional finance. If anything, they were trying to preserve it, just with better tools. That was the twist I never saw coming. I started this investigation believing Wall Street had finally accepted crypto. I finished it realizing Wall Street had done something much more practical. It had quietly borrowed the ideas that actually worked. Not the hype, not the speculation, not the promises of getting rich overnight. Just the parts that solved expensive, boring, real-world problems.
And maybe that's why this story has been so confusing. For years, most of us, including me, were watching the wrong scoreboard. Every headline focused on Bitcoin's price. Every debate asked whether crypto would replace banks. Meanwhile, the institutions building financial infrastructure were asking a completely different question. How do we make the existing system work better? That's a much less exciting headline, but it's probably the more important one, because history rarely changes all at once. It changes quietly, one upgrade at a time. One payment system, one settlement network, one tokenized fund, one pilot project that nobody outside the industry notices until one day everyone wakes up and assumes the new system has always been there. Maybe that's what's happening now. Not a financial revolution, a financial renovation. And those are easy to miss while they're happening. So the next time you see a headline that says Wall Street is embracing crypto, don't ask the question I started with. Don't ask which coin are they buying. Ask the question the evidence forced me to ask. What problem are they trying to solve?
Because after reading earnings calls, investor letters, regulatory papers, and technical reports, I don't think Wall Street quietly chose crypto. I think it quietly chose efficiency. Crypto was simply where some of the best ideas happened to emerge. And maybe that's the biggest misunderstanding in modern finance. We've spent years arguing about the vehicles, while the engineers were busy rebuilding the roads. The next financial revolution probably won't announce itself. It won't arrive with fireworks or a viral tweet. It'll arrive the same way most infrastructure does, quietly, one upgrade at a time. And by the time everyone notices, it'll already be normal.